I returned to the station and began to examine the evidence so far. I always wondered why the authorities always used red yarn to connect the various clues of a case. Next was a conversation over the toxicology report, where I was informed that the body of Miss Candy had been found to contain elevated levels of grilled cheese. Not enough to cause death, but possible enough to render the young girl intoxicated, particularly with her consumption of alcohol that evening as she visited the pub. The cause of death was to be from being stabbed repeatedly, and yet no blood was found in her body or at the scene. Curious indeed. The technician for our crime lab could offer no explanation for the condition of her body. I made my way to the inspector's office and we discussed the aspects of the crime as we understood them so far. The inspector notified me that several people had been arrested that night and charged with possession of grilled cheese. He suggested perhaps a visit with the individuals in the station's holding tank at the moment might prove advantageous. It seems that one, a previously incarcerated individual, had been recently convicted of sales in quantity of the drug, so I began with sharp and concise questioning of the suspect. He reluctantly informed me that somewhere in the desert, in the Oasis Spring Acres, a manufacturing facility had been designed in an abandoned mine shaft. However, he had no idea where it was located. He did however refuse to discuss further any information as to who was responsible for its manufacture, or precisely what, if any, could have been the cause of Candy Board's demise, only to state inequitably that it was not him. He was returned to his cell to await judgment, while I decided to further investigate the crime scene once more. As I need time to digest all the information I had accumulated so far, I decided to walk to the site. My thoughts tried to assimilate the facts. The girl was indeed murdered. There was apparently no blood at the scene. This could only have come from her murder taking place at another location. While no blood in her corpse was found, she may have bled out at the scene of her demise. No further elements for my inspection presented themselves as I surveyed the area. I could still not find a logical element to connect this crime to the grilled cheese found in her system. Did the killer wait for her to become intoxicated enough for her murder? Was the killer involved with the drug scene at all? Was it a random event, or was this entire scenario brought on by something a bit more sinister? I wondered to myself, what was the next step? And I fought back the apprehension that this was the beginning of another twist entirely. I knew I had to further investigate this manufacturing facility I had been informed of by my interrogation of the suspect at the station. I made my way home. I was intensely optimistic that I might find something about this cave, as described by my questioning. Eliza was busy maintaining our household sundry items, and for that I was always grateful. My research had developed into an obsession, so to speak, and I diligently inspected through article after article on the history of the worlds we call SIM. Was there any histrionics revolving around this cave? My query led to an obscure article in the archives of the SIMS newspaper. A paper that had been operating in the world for over 100 years. Many details of the early development of the area were to be found, and pored over for information. One article, dated in the early 1800s, told of a local family having made a curious discovery in the hills surrounding the now-named city of Oasis Springs. At the time of the mention of this particular discovery, a certain household that had moved to the land from the east, a man of the Mr. Land Grab had discovered what he took for a hidden vein of gold in the hills. He led a family expedition into the area and they had begun to mine the hills for the precocious substance with dreams of vast and untold wealth. Apparently they had dug deep into the hills, only to eventually discover that their find was not a golden one, but rather a similar mineral called iron pyrite. The look and consistency of the metal was similar to that of gold, yet it was not. The story ended with the disappointment of Mr. Land Grab and his subsequent abandonment of the mine. However, there were only sketchy descriptions of its location. And I realized much more research would be needed to locate it. I discussed my newfound information with Eliza. and welcomed her perspective on the case. She asked what she might do to assist in the location of the subject, and offered to conduct her own further queries into it for me, and attempt to find further information. I welcomed her assistance, and with that we bid good night and lumbered off to bed. But I was not able to gather much rest that evening, and I made my way to the kitchen to make a quick breakfast for myself as she slept above me. I indulged in one of the few things Eliza had patently taught me to prepare: French toast. With a bit of butter and a dollop of maple syrup, it was a fine beginning to what I suspected would be another busy day. I'm afraid I left the cooking utensils in the sink for cleaning. Strange how someone can just assume, but I knew Eliza would understand this time, as my mind was again developing a theory as I made my way out to return to the station. I decided to walk to my destination this morning, as the air was crisp and clean, and I hoped that the solitude of a brisk jaunt to work would help me gather my thoughts, as well as allow a welcome breath of exercise.